Alrighty everybody, we are going to learn how to make masks today. Here's our pattern, which Mrs. Marion has printed out for you. I'm going to show you how to pin this to the fabric. I should probably show you a mask first. A very simple pattern that I found over the summer. There are a few different ways we can go about this. I'm going to show you two. One, I've put elastic right here on the nose part on the inside to help hold it to your nose. You can also put wire on there. I have the Disney Channel Pandora going because Faye's right there eating lunch. We're keeping her entertained. Anyways, you could also put wire here, which this has nothing. So I'm going to show you what this looks like when it's on your face. This is a fitted mask because of the, well, we'll get into that later. So I used hair ties for this. Goodness, I'm not very good at putting these things on. So at the moment, I have a gap right here. But the reason that doesn't bother me is because I use one of these things. It's called an ear saver. I like to put it on this second notch here, put it on your face, and then it goes behind. So now there's no longer a gap here. You can see it's not on my ears, it's down there on my neck. So it makes it so that my ears don't hurt throughout the day from wearing a mask. So I bought this thing off Amazon, $6.99, and it came in a pack of 4 fun colors too. And then there's this guy, which I told you had the elastic. This is more for when you're not using that ear saver. And you put it on your actual ear because there's no gap here. So I prefer to use the ear savers, even though I have adjusted this just right so that it's not pulling too hard on my ears. Eventually, it just gets annoying to wear a mask, as I'm sure you guys all know at this point. Okay, now we'll get into the nitty-gritty of sewing. Faye's over there looking at me like, who in the world are you talking to? Because it's not me. So we start by cutting out our pattern with paper scissors. Now, if you buy a pattern from the store, a standard pattern, and it has that really thin tissue paper, you can just simply take it and put it on your fabric and cut the pattern out at the same time that you cut out your fabric. But since this is computer paper, these will dull your scissors. So I'm going to use paper scissors. So usually a pattern will have some indication of grain. This pattern does not, so we're going to simply put it on there however we want to put it on there. Here's the fold of my fabric. You can see it's folded. So it makes the most sense to waste the least amount of fabric. So if I put it right here, I'll have open this up and have 2 giant holes. So if I put it up here, I'm going to waste the least amount of fabric. So then we're going to pin them on. You always start by pinning your corners first. You go into the fabric and then you take this finger and you push it like that to make like a little bubble, I guess, so it can make your pin go back out. So you can see on this side that my pin did go all the way through the fabric. So you want that to happen. So we're going to pin all of our corners first. Then, once we get all of our corners pinned, and speaking of pinning, you don't want to pin, want your pin to extrude past the cutting line because your scissors can't cut through those. So make sure you don't go past that. Now we're going to pin about every 2 to 3 fingers all the way around the entire pattern piece. The more pinning the better, especially around a curve, so that your fabric can take on the shape of the pattern piece. We're pinned down. When you look on this side, you see all the pins. So good, we went through both layers of fabric. Now we're going to use our sewing scissors to cut our pattern piece out. You want, looks like I've used these on paper. They're not doing a darn thing to cut this fabric. Good example of why you shouldn't cut paper with your good sewing scissors. Good thing I have more than one. So I like to cut with my pattern piece on the right side, and then I hold onto the fabric with my left hand. It makes it so that I can guide my scissors against the pattern piece. You want to be as accurate as you can. You don't want to cut off the fabric like that because it'll distort the shape of the pattern piece. There we go. There we go. So we've cut out the exact shape of the pattern piece. We're going to need 4 pieces all together, and I just cut out 2 pieces at once. See? I would not suggest going more than 2 layers though. So you don't want to cut out all 4 at once because it becomes too much for your scissors. Okay. Now we're going to do the same thing on this side. I'm not going to, and this is going to hurt me. I'm a big fan of matching my plaids. I'm not going to do that right now. I'm not even going to show you how to do that right now. But I can make this so that the plaids are perfect. When you're wearing this mask, it looks like 1 piece of fabric instead of 2 going across your face. But right now, because we are so beginner, I don't want to confuse you with extra steps, especially since many of you might not have plaid fabric. Alright, we have all our pieces cut out. Ooh, you can see that this didn't cut quite right. Before I take it apart, I'm going to fix that because that would drive me nuts. Oh, this might actually match. Huh. So now the next step is to take right sides, put them together, and pin them from here to here and here to here. So for this one, let me see. Doesn't really matter whether this is the right side or this is the right side, so I'm just going to leave the 2 that are together so I don't have to reinvent the wheel as I'm pinning this. Remember, the more pins you use on a curve, the better, because it's going to keep the shape. Start out with a little back stitch. And we're gonna go fast this time because we have an impatient child who doesn't like making masks. What's wrong, Faye? Our next step is to press our seams open. Now, we have these at school. This is called a ham. It's a pressing ham, and it helps you press a curve. I'm actually going to just press this to the side. Now, because of the fact that we have to deal with COVID and we can't sanitize this ham, we won't be able to use these this year, but in the future we will. Hopefully in the future we're not making masks anymore. But this is used for many applications. Let's say you are making a prom dress and you're trying to press the bodice, the boob area. Well, you'll need to use this hand then as well. So as I pressed this, I made sure to pull this nice and taut so that when I turn this direction, it's going to look perfectly flat. You can't really even tell, instead of what this looks like, which is right now it's bubbled. I'm going to show you how to press this on a not curved. See, and now what I'm going to do is it looks like this. I'm going to take it and turn it like that. And then I'm going to press it from the inside with the iron. See? So you don't need the ham. You just have to be very strategic about your pressing, which I don't think you can really see what I'm doing very well because the camera can't get it quite the right angle. But I am pressing it from the inside. Basically, I pressed it right there. Now you can see on the side, it is no longer bubbled. So those are your two pressing options, which unfortunately for us, this is our only pressing option, is using the not easy way with no ham. So our next step is going to be to pin these two together. This is my exterior fabric, my interior fabric, and I'm going to pin them together right sides facing each other. So here's a right side, and here's this right side, so I have to flip it over so that the right side faces it. And you can see they're perfectly together. So now I'm going to start up here where I have my two seams, and I'm going to line them up with each other, and then I'm going to pin them right there first. Then I'm going to turn it around, and I'm going to get these two seams on the bottom. So line these up with each other and pin them. I'm purposely pinning through my seam allowance to keep it down so that while I'm sewing, see that? Pin through the seam allowance, pin through the seam allowance. Did that on both these sides too. So they'll stay the direction I want them to be. Now I'm just simply going to take these and pin it up the rest of the way. So now we're going to sew this. So from here to here, we're going to sew at 1/4. And then from here to there, we're going to sew at 1/4. All right, I have my machine set up. The machine needle is on the left, which is exactly where it needs to be because all of these markings are based off of the machine needle being positioned on the left. But I do need to up the stitch length to 3. In case I screw up, it's easier to seam rip a stitch length of 3 than it is a 2.5. Remember, the 1/4 inch seam allowance is right here at the edge of this little window here. And there is a marking on your machine to tell you where it is in case you need further help with that. There we go. Pins have been removed. You can see I just sewed on the top and bottom. So typically with a steep curve, we clip the curves, but this isn't very steep, believe it or not. So we're not going to clip this curve, and we'll learn about that later in the semester. But I am going to take this and flip it right side out through the side. So we're going to press this because it's not trying to lie nicely together. at the top or the bottom. It looks really bubbly here. So we're gonna press it to make it perfect. And with any sewing project that you do, pressing is the difference between homemade and professional. So you wanna press, press, press. So I'm trying to get it pressed perfectly so that there's no bubble right here between the two fabrics. So you just kind of take it with your fingers and work it. Get nice and flat underneath. And just work at the top edge, which you probably can't see. I'm just at the very top edge. So I'm not down here with the iron because that would just become a wrinkled mess. I'm just at the very top right there with the iron. There we go. And you can feel with your hands the seam allowance. I just used my finger to fix it because it was all twisted on the inside. So I just kind of popped it back in place with my finger. So that's the mask. We're almost done with this. There's another step that we're going to do on the sewing machine now. You're gonna do what I call an edge stitch, which means literally you're sewing at the edge of the fabric. So I want to sew about right here. So that would be like 1/8 of an inch. So my needle is to the left because that's how it starts, like we've talked about before. And then there's this little line on the presser foot in the center. I'm lining up that line with the edge of this fabric. So I'm guiding right there. So this is the inside of the mask, and it gets folded. Oh, gets folded, and I put my what do you call it? Hair ties. First of all, I want to fold this down 1/4 of an inch to get rid of this raw edge. You can use a seam gauge to do your 1/4 of an inch. I eyeball it since I've sewn so long. I know what 1/4 of an inch looks like. But basically, see this raw edge? I'm going to then fold it again, the amount that I need to fold it. And see, now it's a folded edge instead of a raw edge. This will always stay frayed like this. So if I encase it, then it's going to be on the inside of the fabric and it won't fray all over the place. So here's the difference between, this hasn't been folded down 1/4 of an inch yet. So if I just simply fold it over, that looks pretty, as you guys might say, trashy, because you can see all of those frayed edges. So I'm gonna fold it over 1/4 and then fold it over again. I like to use hair ties for my masks. I'm trying to find two that are the same color. I don't have another one that is this color. Well, this will work, kind of, I guess. It's not terrible. So I'm just gonna take them, stick them here, and then kind of fold it this about this much to start out with. I can always fold it less. I'm gonna take a pin, one of my small ones, so I don't accidentally get myself stabbed here as I'm trying to try this on. There we go. It's upside down. So put this on my ear like this. And then I'm gonna take this one, put it on this side, fold it, and see how far it needs to fold until I get a good fit on my mask. So it seems it's a little bit big. So I need to fold it a little bit more. Ooh, you probably need to see this as I was trying to do that in my lap. Okay. Now here's the part where you're gonna have gaps in your nose area if you don't pull this, if you don't fold this in the right amount. So this is probably about 1.5 inches, and this initial fold that I made is 1 inch. So I'm gonna make this one 1.5 inches also. Put it around your ear, put it around your ear. Okay, it's comfortable on my ears. It's not too taut, but it's not too loose, because if it's too loose, then you have too many gaps here. So this works. I could make it a little bit. I could make it a little bit tighter. I'm thinking I'm gonna pull this another 1/2 inch. So I'm just gonna take this, and I start from the very top, like right here, and I go all the way to right here. That way, when I look at it from this side, you just see one line going all the way across, instead of a line that's like from right here to right here. So I go all the way from the top to the bottom. So, see, this is what I was saying. I sewed it from seam to seam so that you don't start out, see right here and here. It'd look kind of silly if my stitching started right here. So that makes it look more professional. Of course, I'm gonna cut my strings after I'm finished with this. I'm not gonna cut my strings right now, pretend they're cut, but there we go. It is done. And I can still use my ear saver with this. See all the notches I was talking about? That's what prevents you from having to really care about how big that is there on the edge. Ta-da! You can see my plaids don't match each other. They go nicely there, but like I said before, I can show you guys how to match plaids and patterns, but that is for another day when we become more advanced.